You've got a handful of APIs, maybe an Azure Functions backend, an app service, a couple of microservices. Sooner or later, someone asks, where do we centralize authentication, rate limiting, and a developer portal? That's the Azure API Management decision, and people get it wrong in two directions. They either skip it and bolt cross-cutting concerns onto every service, or they reach for the premium tier and burn money they didn't need to. In the next few minutes, I'll give you the criteria that actually matter, the realistic tier options, when a different service fits better, and a clear recommendation framework. Before picking a product, decide what you're actually buying. First, do you need a single front door for many backends with consistent policies or just routing? Second, do you need a self-service developer portal and subscription keys for external consumers? Third, what are your networking requirements? Public, private VNet injection, or private endpoints? Fourth, latency and scale. How many requests per second? And can you tolerate cold starts? Fifth, cost predictability. Flat hourly capacity versus pay-per-call. If you only need TLS termination and path routing, you may not need API management at all. Match the tool to these 5, not to the feature list. Conceptually, API management sits as a reverse proxy with a programmable pipeline. A client call hits the gateway where the inbound policy section runs first, validate the JWT, check the subscription key, enforce a rate limit. Then the request is forwarded to your backend, which can be any reachable HTTP endpoint. On the way back, the outbound section runs, transform the response, strip headers, cache the result. Around all of it, telemetry flows to application insights and Azure Monitor. The key mental model, the gateway is just one runtime component. There's also a management plane for configuration and the developer portal for consumers. Tiers are where the money lives. The consumption tier is serverless and pay-per-call, great for sporadic or event-driven APIs, but it has cold starts and lacks a few features. The newer basic V2 and standard V2 tiers give you faster provisioning and simpler VNet integration at a moderate flat cost. These are increasingly the sweet spot for most teams. Premium is for serious workloads, multi-region deployment, full VNet injection, and high throughput, but it starts around a couple $1,000s a month per unit. Developer tier is cheap but carries no SLA, use it for non-production only. Prices and tier features change, so confirm against the current Azure docs before you commit. API management isn't always the answer. If your need is global routing, caching static content, and a web application firewall in front of public sites, Azure Front Door fits better and overlaps very little. If you need regional Layer 7 load balancing with a WAF inside a VNet, that's Azure Application Gateway. API management is the right pick specifically when you want API lifecycle features, subscriptions, products, versioning, a developer portal, and rich policies. A common production pattern is layering. Front door for global edge, then API management behind it for API governance. They're complementary, not competitors. The real reason architects choose API management is the policy engine, an XML pipeline you attach at the global, product, API, or operation scope. You can validate tokens, enforce quotas, and rate limits per subscription. Rewrite URLs, mock responses before a backend exists, cache responses, and call external services mid-request. You can transform between JSON and XML, inject headers, and short-circuit with custom error responses. This is what lets you remove boilerplate from every microservice and govern it centrally. The trade-off, policies become real logic, so version them in source control and test them. Don't treat the portal as your source of truth. A few traps catch teams. 1. Over-provisioning premium when V2 tiers would do. Start smaller and scale up. 2. Treating the gateway as a place for heavy business logic. Keep policies thin. Complex transformation belongs in your services. 3. Ignoring the management portal as configuration drift. Export everything as a RM or bicep and deploy through pipelines. 4. Forgetting that VNet injection and private networking are tier-gated, so design networking before you pick the tier, not after. 5. Underestimating cold starts on consumption for latency-sensitive APIs. Confirm the current limits and SL as in the Azure docs since these shift. So here's the framework. Choose API management when you need API lifecycle governance, subscriptions, a developer portal, and centralized policies, not just routing. For routing or edge caching, reach for front door or application gateway instead and layer them when it helps. On tiers, default to a V2 tier for most production workloads. Consumption for spiky traffic and premium only when you genuinely need multi-region or VNet injection. Your concrete next step, write down your answers to the 5 criteria: backends, portal, networking, throughput, cost, shape, then map them to a tier in a single decision table. Verify prices and feature gating in the current Azure docs before you provision. If this helped, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.